Greetings, 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 greetings. What's going on? This is your brother Chief Kalinago Flying Eagle. What it is, what it is, what it is, man. What it do? Why go on? Hope everybody's having a great 24 so far. We're about to get into a little bit of digging because guess what? I found the transatlantic slave ship. I found it, man. Found it. I saw a little something on TikTok, and of course, like I've always been teaching that stuff, but it gave me some inspiration to get into this video. You know what I mean? So I appreciate each and every one of you that's out here just putting the truth. You know what I mean? And that was one of my motivations. Now, this lesson, this video is brought to you and sponsored by www.myniji.com. That's www.myniji.com, myniji.com. So go to the website, check out the merch, go ahead and subscribe and support. All right. Like I said, it's time that we continue. Well, it's time that we start and continue, building our legacy and making our declarations as to, hold on for a second, as to who we are as a people. So definitely go to the website, like I said, and subscribe and support. All right. So like I said, man, I found the transatlantic slave ship, and we're about to get into that. So yes, they are correct. All right. They are correct. His story did tell the truth that there were about 12.5 slaves that came on the transatlantic slave ships. All right. So we're going to get into that, and if I have, put any type of information saying there wasn't no 12.5 million slave ships, that brought people here into the United States and the Americas, then I totally apologize. All right. I apologize. Like I said before, I stand to be corrected, and this is part of my growing process, and I'm still learning. So let's get into this. Okay. Let's get into this. First thing we're going to do is we are going to read some of that. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to get because there's also proof of that. They have it's not a museum, but a monument that's actually downtown Manhattan, and I think it's by Bowling Green. So what I'm going to do is, they say never make a promise, but if I have some time, either Tuesday or Wednesday, I'll go down to Bowling Green and I'll do a live video and show that to y'all, just to, again, solidify what I'm talking about in this lesson, because I like to show proof of everything that I talk about. So let's get into this. The first I'm going to present to you is, let me see, that where we're going to go at. Give me 1 second, please. We are going to go here. All right. And we even have the name of the transatlantic liner. All right. All right. Let's get into this. I'm excited. I'm excited. I'm excited. Don't get nervous, y'all. Don't get nervous. All right. Don't get nervous. So here we are. Okay. The USS Patricia. All right. Let's read. Let this thing populate because I think there's a slight delay. Okay. There's a slight delay. Because like I always tell people, right, you have to do research. You have to search, and then you have to do research. And then you have to take your emotions out of everything that we were taught and look at things from a different perspective, from an outsider looking in, and then connect the dots, and you'll see what's making sense, and you'll see all the nonsense. And then once you're able to do that by taking your emotions out of the equation, without any type of attachments, then you will find the truth. Because a lot of times our emotion blind us from seeing the truth, and not just seeing the truth, because when we see the truth, we ignore the truth. And that's why we are stuck in this paradigm, with such educational system and the nonsense that they taught us. So let us read. Okay. The Patricia was a transatlantic liner that was launched in Germany in 1899 and spent most of her career with Hamburg America Line, HAPAG. She was the last to be built of a class of Hapag sister ships that came from shipyards in the United Kingdom and Germany between 1896 and 1899. In 1919, Hapag surrendered Patricia to the United States as part of Germany's World War I reparations to the Allies, and she was used to repatriate American expeditionary forces troops from Europe. Later in 1919, she was transferred from the US government to the UK shipping controller. She was scrapped in England in 1921. All right. So that is the transatlantic slave trade. I mean, the transatlantic ship, all right, that was built. And it was bringing people here into the Americas. All right. That is the only record of a transatlantic ship. Hapag was also announced a reduction in its transatlantic fares, etc., 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 etc. Okay. On May 7th, 1899, Patricia began her maiden voyage from Hamburg via Boulogne to New York. She reached New York on May 19th and was opened for public inspection at Hoboken Terminal, New Jersey on May 25th. In the LB on the 2nd January 1910, Patricia rammed the life vessel Elb, whatever, and let me see, blah 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 blah. Anyway, I put all the links in the description for you. You could read all that. I just want to show you and prove to you the over 12 point something million slaves or in so-called indentured servants that came here into the Americas. All right, but I put all that there for you. So as you could see, you could see actual pictures, real pictures of the people on the ship. All right, there's a reason for all of this. All right, and there's always a madness to everything that I talk about. There's always a madness to everything that I talk about. So yes, there was a transatlantic slave ship. All right, and it was from the the U.S. Patricia, and it was from the line of this. It had a line of Hapag sister ships. Just so you know. Now the Hapag sister ships. Let's go ahead and read a little bit about that. The Hapag sister ship is of the same class of the virtual identical design to another ship, such as vessels share a nearly identical hull and superstructure layout. So this is what they look like. Okay, let's tap on that and you see if we see a picture of those ships. They were actually huge ships. All right, huge steamships. The only time there was a transatlantic slave trade is when they built the steamships. I'm going to repeat that again. The only time there was a transatlantic slave trade was when they built the steamships. All right? Keep that in mind. Now, where did these people go? Where did they come from? This is what we're going to get into right now. Let us go ahead and talk about the passage, because that's the middle passage they are talking about. All right? They're talking about the middle passage. Let's get into that right now. You think these people are slick? Let me tell you something, man. The Pale Man and his stories. That's why there's no such thing as White History Month, because you don't have to dig too deep to learn the truth. There's a reason why there's no such thing as White History Month, because you will learn the truth. We are going to get into the bottom of this whole transatlantic slave trade. Now, let us look at the passage. First stop, the passage. That is the only time there was a middle passage with the transatlantic slave ships. And I just showed you when it was built in the 1800s. Okay? Because before that, steamships were not built. I think the first one was built. We'll get into that. Okay? Let us go ahead and see where all these immigrants of this, they don't call them slaves, they call them immigrants. All right. But when what they did was they flipped the script and then say, well, slaves, and then say that so-called black people in the Americas were the slaves when we were already here. You see, like I said, they flipped the script. But let us read, because reading is fun for the mental. This is the passage, the middle passage. All right. Story. Most of the immigrants who came to America through Ellis Island were from Eastern and Southern Europe. Keep that in mind. Those were the slaves that came into Europe, that came into the Americas. They came from Eastern and Southern Europe. Those are the people that when you go to look at the definition of American in Noah's Webster's 1828 dictionary, it says, okay, an aboriginal, a native of America, meaning that the original people of America, or the copper-colored people found in America by the Europeans and are now given to the people born, to the Europeans born in America. So in other words, they're telling you that they took our place. Okay, see where they came from. Eastern Europe and Southern Europe. We are talking about a lot of these Native Americans. But let us read some more. They began their journey to America on foot, horseback, or train. Many trekked hundreds of miles across Europe to get to a seaport. When they arrived at the coast, they boarded a steamship. Okay, a steamship. You see it right here. All right, and they have the design and the architect of the ship. All right. Now we're going to compare that to the picture that they embedded in our mental about this so-called slave ship from Africa. I'm going to show you the difference and show you the lie. Yes, there were 12.5 or over 12 million slaves who came into the Americas. All right. There was a transatlantic slave trade. There was a Middle Passage, but it was not people coming from Africa or so-called black people. They were pale-skinned people. But like I said, we're just getting started. The trip across the Atlantic Ocean lasted 1 to 2 weeks. And when these people rode, on their horseback to get to a seaport, they're talking about in their native island or their native country. Okay, just so y'all know, so that they could come across. Now, check this out. The ships divided passengers by wealth and class. Okay, so classism, is something that was brought here. All right, you had first and second class passengers. They stayed in stateroom and cabins. Those were the higher echelons of their societies in Europe. But most people, the common folk, were in the third class, called steerage. Steerage was a large open space at the bottom of the ship. As many as 3,000 people crowded the ships. They often came from different countries, spoke different languages, and belonged to different religions. Okay, that's facts. This is well documented. Okay, this is well documented down in Ellis, the seaport on Ellis Island, and they have a monument in Bowling Green, which I'm going to do a live video and show y'all exactly that this is true. So now you saw the passage, you saw the transatlantic slave ship when it was built. All right, let's continue. Next, let us go look at the overview of Ellis Island. We're diving a little deeper. All right. Because they tricked us into making us think we came from Africa on slave ships, when the truth of the matter is, I'm going to expose who the slaves were and who came on these slave ships. But of course, they will not call them slaves, but I'm going to prove to you that they were slaves. Okay, here we go. And I put all this in the description for y'all. Okay, Ellis Island. Prior to 1890, individual states, rather than the federal government, regulated immigration into the United States. Castle Garden, now Castle Clinton, located in the Battery of Manhattan, served as the New York State immigration station from 1855 to 1890. Like I said, I'm going to do a video and I'm going to show that. I'll do a live and I will take you to expose a little part of history to you. Approximately 8 million immigrants passed through its doors, and mostly from northern European countries. This constituted the first large wave of immigrants to settle and populate the United States. Okay? But of course, they're going to call them immigrants. Let's pay attention. In the 1800s, rising political instability, economic distress, and religious persecutions plagued Europe, fueling the largest, most human migration in the history of the world. Around 1890, it became apparent that the Castle Garden was ill-equipped and unprepared to handle the mass influx, leading to the federal government to construct a new immigration station on Ellis Island. During the construction, the barge office in the battery was used for immigration processing. The new structure on Ellis Island began receiving arriving immigrants on January 1st, 1892. Annie Moore, a teenage girl from Ireland, accompanied by her two younger brothers, made history as the very first immigrant to be processed at Ellis Island. Over the next 62 years, more than 12 million, they're talking about immigrants, would arrive in the United States via Ellis Island. When it's not immigrants, okay, it's slaves. And I'm going to show it to you. And I'm going to prove it to you. Those were the black people who came here. All right? Let us read. They were the pale people that came here, because black means pale. You see, they trick us with this technology, the words. All right? Sailing to the land of liberty. Most immigrants entered the United States through the New York Harbor, although there were other ports of entry in the cities such as Boston, Philadelphia, Baltimore, San Francisco, and New Orleans. The great steamship companies like the White Star, the Red Star, the Cunard, and the Hamburg America lines played a significant role in the history of Ellis Island and immigration as a whole. First and second class passengers arriving in New York Harbor were not required to undergo the inspection process of Ellis Island. Instead, these passengers received a cursory inspection aboard the ship. Theory being that if a person could afford to purchase a first or second class ticket, they were affluent and less likely to become a public charge in the American due to the medical or legal reasons. However, regardless of class, sick passengers or those with legal problems were sent to Ellis Island for further inspection. This scenario was far different for third-class passengers, commonly referred to as steerage. These immigrants traveled in crowded and often unsanitary conditions near the bottom of the steamships, all right, often spending up to 2 weeks seasick in their bunks during rough Atlantic Ocean crossings. My brothers and sisters, that was the slave trade, okay? Trading, it was literally trading people, all right? Let's read. After the steamship docked in the harbor, typically along the west coast of Manhattan, steerage passengers would board a ferry to Ellis Island for their detailed inspection. All right, and this is people awaiting examination on Ellis Island. They have actual pictures of these people. Okay, actual pictures. There's no actual pictures of us coming here on no slave ship. All they have is drawings. Drawings. Because they have to paint a different picture. They have to create a different type of history or story for themselves. All right? Let's read. Fire on Ellis Island. During the early morning hours of June 15th, 1897, a fire on Ellis Island burned the immigration station completely to the ground. Although no lives were lost, federal and state immigration records dating back to 1855 burned, along with the Pine Building that failed to protect them. The U.S. Treasury, quickly ordered the immigration facility to be rebuilt under one very important condition. All future structures built on Ellis Island had to be fireproof. On December 17th, 1900, the new main building was opened and 2,251 immigrants were received that day. While ship manifests were burned for entries prior to 1897, custom lists remain. These records were kept safe in the U.S. Custom Office. Now, let me ask you a question. Why were they burning the manifest? Because they were trying to hide that history because they had to recreate it. Okay, but guess what? The custom officers keep the receipt and the records. So while the foundation passengers search does not include ship manifest for the years prior to 1850 for 1897, customs list for those passengers are available to view. Like I said, they wanted to get rid of that history, but trust me, it's well recorded in and the customs. They have every single passenger that came on the transatlantic slave trade, but they're calling it immigration slave ships, right? Or immigrant slave ships. Now, quite similar to a ship manifest, these records detail each passenger name, age, country of origin, as well as how many pieces of luggage they carried on they carried, arrival and inspection. Give me 1 second. Come on, man. Arrival and inspection. If an immigrant's papers were in order and they were reasonable good health, the Ellis Island inspection process lasted 3 to 5 hours. The inspections took place in the registry room, Great Hall, where the doctors would briefly scan every individual for obvious physical ailments. Doctors at Ellis Island soon became very adept at conducting these 6-second physicals. By 1916, it was said that a doctor could identify numerous medical conditions ranging from anemia to trachoma by simply glancing at a person. The ship's manifest log, initially filled out at the ship's port of departure, contained the immigrants' names and answers to 29 questions. This document was used by the legal inspectors at Ellis Island to cross-examine during the legal inspection. Contrary to the popular belief, the interpreters of all major languages were employed at Ellis Island, making the process efficient and ensuring that records were accurate. Despite the island's reputation as an island of tears, the first majority of immigrants were treated courteously and respectfully, free to begin their new lives in America after only a few short hours on Ellis Island. Only 2% of the arriving immigrants were excluded from entry. The two main reasons for exclusion were a doctor diagnosing an immigrant with a contagious disease that could endanger the public health, or a legal inspector was concerned an immigrant would likely become public charge or an illegal contract. All right, and you see more pictures, and they have the inspection card. All right, and of course you have laws and regulations. In the early 1900s, U.S. immigration officials mistakenly thought that the peak wave of immigration had passed. To their surprise, immigration was on the rise. In fact, in 1901 marked the busiest year at Ellis Island, with approximately 1.5 million, they say immigrants, but I say slaves, processed. From the very beginning of the mass migration period that spanned 1880 to 1924, a relentless group of politicians and nativists demanded increased restrictions on immigration. All right. A literacy test, the Chinese Exclusion Act, the Alien Contract Labor Law, Quota Laws, and the National Origins Act laws were among the regulations enacted limit who could enter the U.S., etc., etc., etc. All right. So those are the details of Ellis Island, but we're gonna continue reading some more. All right. Let us read some more. These people think they're slick, man. Let us go here again and read some more. All right. Check this out. How Ellis Island shepherded millions of immigrants into America. Entrance through this New York immigration epicenter usually took a few hours. No passports or visas required. No passports or visas required. Let's read. Okay. 65 years ago, on November 12, 1954, a Norwegian merchant seaman named Ann Peterson became the last immigrant to pass through Ellis Island. Later that month, the ferry Ellis Island made its final stop at the island in New York Harbor, and immigration facilities closed for good, ending its run as a gateway to the United States for generations of immigrants. These days, Ellis Island is a national symbol remembered in sepia tones. But while it was in active service, the station reflected the country's complicated relationship with immigration, one that evolved from casual openness to rigid restrictions. It was not a great welcoming place for immigrants, but it was not a place of horrors either, says Vincent Canato, author of American Passage: The History of Ellis Island. All right, now look at these people. As you could see, a lot of them look like the older, especially to the left, to my left, of the older Native Americans. Okay? All right. Look at this one right here in the middle with the white. That looked like the Native Americans they would show us on television. But of course, they used to darken their skin. Okay? All right. How did they do that? They do that with makeup. All right, let's read. It says women and children were separated from men when they first entered the building on Ellis Island. Until the end of the 19th century, individual states handled immigration with rules varying by jurisdiction. But then immigration soared from 1880 to 1889 was just massive, says Barrow Moreno, librarian and historian at the Statue of Liberty National Monument and author of the Encyclopedia of Ellis Island. Never before had the country ever received such numbers. In light of influx, the federal government decided in 1891 that it had to take charge. New York was immigration's epicenter. Some 5% of the country's steamship traffic came through New York Harbor, and so did 75% of the nation's immigrants, according to Catano. New York State ran an immigration facility called Castle Gardens at the tip of Manhattan, but the new Federal Office of Immigration wanted an intake and inspection station in a more controlled location. It selected Ellis Island, a 3-acre spot of land in the harbor between New York and New Jersey, but before it could open, the island had been doubled in size with windfall or windfield. All right. So those are the ships. All right. Only slave ships. Transatlantic slave ships. Okay. Now it says the demographics of immigration had changed drastically in the decades before Ellis Island opened. There, once most immigrants came from Western and Northern Europe and were predominantly Protestants. Okay. After the Civil War, they began to come from Russia, Eastern Europe, and Italy, and they were what? Jewish and Catholic, fleeing programs and poverty. All right. Some Americans wondered how the influx would affect the economy's character, says Moreno. These were strange countries to many people. Even so, during the early decades of the federal control, there were few restrictions on who could enter country except for the Chinese immigrations, who were effectively banned by the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882. And a lot of the Chinese came through what's called, Angels Island in California. All right. Just in case you want to do some research on that as well. So I'm just showing you, man, that these people lied to us. Okay. The over 12 point something million people that came here on any type of a transatlantic slave ship, all right, were literally pale people coming from Europe. It says between 1892 and 1924, over 12 million people successfully traveled this highly efficient conveyor belt immigration system. Most immigrants were processed through Ellis Island in a few hours. Okay. That's where they came from. Those are advertisements. This sister is not one of them. Okay. Just letting y'all know. Okay. So we could end this here and we could go read another article. Now, I want anybody to show me detailed documents of us coming here from Africa on slave ships. Guess what? You can't find that because it didn't happen. It did not happen. It did not happen. As a matter of fact, when these steamships were coming into the United States, they made stops in the Caribbean as well and dropped people off. And they picked some people up in the Caribbean and brought them here as well. Okay, because they wanted to bring people here for the workforce. Those were the slaves. All right, let us read. Check this out. Ellis Island circa 1900s. Let me drink some water. You see a sister all the way to the left, right? Ellis Island was the gateway for more than 12 million immigrants who passed through its doors. Immigrants, they're workers, okay? Hence, aka slaves. But let us go look at some of the pictures of some of the people who came. All right, Ellis Island immigrants. Now, you this picture right here, don't that look like what the Native Americans back in the days? Hmm? They have, let me tell y'all something, man. They have documents of everyone who came into the Americas from 1492 onwards. They have documents. All right, they have proof and documents of that. But they have no proof and document that we came from Africa on slave ships. Look at this right here. Look at the sisters. These sisters, where? Where did they come from? The portrait of women from Guadeloupe. Those are indigenous women from Guadeloupe that they stopped on their way and picked up. Okay? Arawaks from Guadeloupe. All right? Like I said, man, these people keep playing these games with us, man. Check this out. They have pictures, man. They have pictures. They have documents. They have documents. All the so-called Negroes, that's of the Americas. We were already here. We did not come here on no damn slave ship from Africa. Okay? We did not. Check this out. This is a Sami woman from Finland. It's an Italian woman. Everybody lining up for inspection. Trust me, man. Here we go. Here, all the immigrants, all the people that came on the transatlantic slave, you know, they want to call it immigrant ship, but here they are. Okay, they're pale-skinned people. All right. Somebody told a lie. Somebody told a lie. Like I said, there's a reason why there's no such thing as White History Month, because you ain't got to go too far to learn the truth. All you have to do is do a little digging. All you have to do is a little digging. That's all you got to do. Now, let us go to the bottom of this lie now. All right. When they told us our ancestors came here on slave ships. And this is what they're showing us in school and they're showing us on TV. But we're going to debunk that nonsense. All right. This is the diagram that they show us, right? Check this out. Now, what does this look like? This look like a steamship, don't it? This look like a steamship, don't it? You see, like I tell people, man, get your emotions out of this Africa thing and this emotional connection you have to Africa. Now, like I tell people, many of you will continue to think that I have something against Africans. No, I don't. I just got something against lies. That's all that's what I got something against, lies. Okay, the lies. Because this is the blueprint of the supposed slave ship that brought all of the 12 millions of Africans here from Africa. All right, but this is the blueprint or the diagram, right? And they're showing us this. That's what they have imprinted in our mind. Okay? Let us read. It says, slave ships. The slave ship was the means by which nearly 12.5 enslaved Africans were transported from Africa to the Americas between 1500 and 1866. Now look at this ship again. All right, this is not a wind sail ship. All right, this is not propelled by wind. No, this is a steamship. All right, let's pay attention. This is a steamship. Let's pay attention. Slave ships range in size from 10 tons, We don't have to read the whole thing. I'm just showing you what they told us, all right? And they're showing us drawings. You see that? They're showing us drawings. Drawings. Now, this is what? This is a slave deck of a bark Wildfire brought into Key West on April 30th, 1860. Now, this is 1860, but we have real pictures of real people, and they were pale people. So why are they showing us drawings when it comes to us? Because it never happened. Okay, now mind you, if this drawing had said, 1620, then somebody would use the argument and say, well, Chief, guess what? Come on, let's be real. They did not have photography then. But we have pictures of pale people in the 1800s coming into the Americas. We have pictures, actual pictures. But when it comes to us, they have drawings because it never happened. It never happened. It is all made up because they have to flip everything around and make us think the 12-point-something million or more slave or servants that came here, okay, it was us, black people, so-called black people. But I'm going to show you what they actually meant. All these drawings. Now, show us real people. Like we have the real pale people. Now, you saw what the slave ships look like, the diagram or the blueprint. Once again, this is not a ship that is propelled by the wind or water. This is a steam. A steam. All right. Let us close this out. Conductive reasoning, my brothers and sisters. Conductive reasoning. Now let us go look at the first set of slave ships and look at the size of those slave ships. Let's look at them. This is what the wind ships look like the Pinta Maria and the whatever they call them, the Pinta, the Christopher Columbus, joints, the Pinta, the Santa Maria, and all that nonsense. Whatever the name was, because Christopher Columbus was a damn liar. Anyway, check this out. This is what they look like, my brothers and sisters. The first so-called African slave ships that was built. You see them? So let me ask you a question. Where did this diagram that I just showed you came from? But it was a steam ship. Where did that come from? You see, once again, when you study, and you study through a process of what's called conductive, or not necessarily conductive, the process of elimination, okay? Conductive reasoning, then you're able to dive into the pile of rubbish they give us and take the gems. I am giving you the gems right now. You feel me? This is what they look like. Okay? This is what they look like. And the majority of these people that were coming here, they were people of status. Like I showed y'all before, the so-called black nobles of Europe. And I've already shown you and proved to you that King James, King Charles, the sons and the grandsons were people of color. Okay? Let us stop sharing that. So you see the first so-called African slave ships built? This is what they look like. Now, let us go and see when steamships were first built. But they showed you a diagram of one that was carrying 12 million slaves from Africa, right? Let's see if that's true. Check this out. What does it say? The first steam-powered ship was a paddle that was built when? In 1783. In 1783. Okay? In 1783. So, like I said, man, when these people are telling us these lies, we have to stop believing all this nonsense. Let us stop believing all this nonsense. They're all a bunch of lies. A bunch of lies. Okay? A bunch of lies. So what they did was they rewrote history and called these slaves that came here, or the Slavs that came here, they call them um immigrants, the 12 point something million. But then they had to replace the original people. In other words, paper genocide. They had to replace them on paper with drawings and on the canvas. And they had to call the indigenous people here slaves and say they came from Africa. But the story doesn't add up. Because like I said, I showed you actual pictures of pale people coming here in the 1800s. Okay? But in the 1800s, with us, they're showing drawings. Show me real pictures, because all the records exist. Now, this is what we're going to do now. We're going to go look at the etymology of slave. Etymology of slave. Like I said, man, these people are playing games with us, man. They're playing games with us. Etymology of slave. Let us read. 13th century. Slave or esclave, a person who is the chattel or a property of another. From Old English esclave, 13th century, and directly from medieval Latin sclavus, slave, source, also of Italian schiavo, French esclave, Spanish esclavo, originally Slav. It says see Slav, also used in this secondary sense because of the many Slavs sold into slavery by conquering peoples. Okay, conquering peoples. The oldest written history of Slavs, aka slaves, can be shortly summarized: myriads or myriads of slave hunts and the enthrallment of entire peoples. The Slav was the most prized of human goods, with increased strength outside his martial land of origin, hardened to the utmost against all pervasion, industrious content, with little good, humid, and cheerful, he filled the slave markets of Europe, Asia, and Africa. And eventually it was the Americas. You feel me? So all you have to do is do a little bit of digging, man. Do a little bit of digging. It says the meaning: one who has lost the power of resistance to some habit or vice, is from 1550, applied to devices from the 1904s, especially those which are controlled by others. Similarly, locomotives, flash bulbs, etc., 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 etc. Okay, you could read. Okay, Slavic word is also the source of what? A robot. A robot is a slave. Okay. Now you read slave here, right? Let's read again. What does it say again? Now, slave, native tribe of Northwest Canada. A native tribe of Northwest Canada, from slave, said to tribe, Cree Algonquin, Awakan, captive slave. So once again, check this out. Even when they captured our people, they called them slaves. So you see, once again, my brothers and sisters, pay attention. Because they called us slave, it did not mean we came from somewhere. Okay, look at another meaning of slave, but that did not happen until 1789. Okay, it says a native tribe of northeastern Canada, from slave, said to translate Cree. Okay, Algonquin, Awakan, captive slave, meaning that a prisoner of war. Slave, 1550, to enslave from slave, the meaning of work like a slave, is attested in the 1790s. So nowhere you see slave have anything to do with someone coming from Africa. No, slave came from Slav. Let us stop on Slav now. Slav. One of the people who inhabit the most of whom Eastern Europe. Now, who came here? Who came here in Ellis Island? People from Eastern and Southern Europe. They were the people who came here. All right. From the shortening of Proto-Slavic, a Slav, which is probably related to Slavo word speech, with which suggests the name originally identified a member of speech community, compare of the old Slavonic, blah blah blah, related blah, 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 blah. Okay, here we go, man. The etymology of words, my brothers and sisters. All right, here we have it. See, now let us go look at the etymology of the word black. Like I said, man, they tricked our people. Stanford and Sons. Let's read. Black. Check this out. Black. Absolutely darkness. That we, that's the adjective, right? In terms of but also it means SWAT, right? It came from the word SWAT. That's where the word black came from. The word SWAT. What does SWAT means? SWAT means black, dark of night. It means wicked, infamous. Okay? It means dirty. And it came from the word what? Sordid. Sordid. Okay, so you see where the word black came from? It came from SWAT and it originated from sordid. What is sordid? Sordid. A bodily sore. Leprosy. Okay? Pay attention. Bodily sore. Okay? Sordidos. Dirty, filthy, foul, mean, base, shabby, sawdust, dirt, filth. SWAT. Black. So those were the people, because those people were catching, because these people did not bathe. They were called black. It wasn't because of the complexion of their skin. It was because of the nature of their character. No personal hygiene. They were dirty. They were filthy. They were getting scabs on their body. Leprosy. Those are the black people. Now let's go back to the word black and tie all of this together. Let's tie all of this together and go to black. And what does it say? Black means what? Black means what? It says the same root produced the Middle English. Black means what? Pale. Pale. So what does that mean, my brothers and sisters? We took the pale, the curse. We took the curse of the pale man, which is the black man. The Slavs, the slaves who came here. You see how easy that was to solve? Solve the puzzle. It is really that simple. Study to show yourself approved. Study to show thyself approved. So let us recap. Let us recap this lesson here, because I'm about to conclude this. Like I said, there are records from 1492. They have detailed records, trust me, it exists, of all the people who came here. I promise you. And even when I showed you the Virginia colonial records and the New York colonial records of war, the George Washington War, I showed you where the people of color came from. They came from Europe. They did not come from Africa. That's a damn lie. And they came here as indentured servant, not slaves. Okay? The Slavs who came here, the slaves who came here, they call immigrants, are the Slavs. The 12 point something million, that's who the slaves are and were. Okay? That's who the slaves are and were. You feel me? And they had to replace our people. They had to replace our people, the workforce, because our people were the first workforce in the Americas. We were the workforce in the Americas, and they had to be replaced. And they were replaced with those people coming from Europe. First, it were people of color, then the slaves. Okay, the only slaves that came, the dark-skinned people of Europe that came were not slaves. They were indentured servants. But the slaves that came, they were the ones who came from Eastern and Northern Europe. They were the Slav. That's what slave means. They were the black people, the pale people. Okay? For those of you who don't know, you did. They were the third class citizens. And guess what our people did? Because of the 14th Amendment, we were the ones who became the third class citizens. You see how everything was flipped around? Everything was flipped around. Now, let me go show y'all something real quick. Like I tell people, man, study to show yourself approved, man. Study to show yourself approved. Study. Mm, 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 mm. All right, let us go. And let me show you where some of these slaves went to. I'm going to let us go. Let us go look at the etymology of Africa. Let me show you who the real Africans are. Okay? African. A native or inhabitant of Africa. Latin, Africanus, adjective of Africa, African. From Africa, see from Africa, see Africa. Used of white residents of Africa from 1815. Now, what does it say? Used of black residents of the U.S. from the 1800, when it especially meant one brought from Africa, and sometimes was contrasted to who? Native-born Negro. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Hold up. Wait a minute. So who's this native-born Negro? Don't hurt them too bad, Chief. Don't hurt them too bad. Because they were comparing real so-called Africans who came here to what? The native-born Negro. Who's that? So where these Negroes came from? Where did they come from? An adjective pertaining to Africa or Africans. Now, this is what we're going to do. The native-born Negro. Who's that? What did Martin Luther King say? The Negro is exiled in his own land. What did Malcolm X say? You are the Aborigines, but you don't like being called the Aborigines. What did what's his name? James Baldwin said, man, I used to look at the movies, the cowboy movies, and I would see the cowboys fighting with the Indians, and I would root for the cowboys or either the Indians, not knowing I was the Indian. Oh, now let us go look at the etymology of Africa and see what Africa really is or where Africa really was. Africa, African land, Libya, the Carthaginian territory, the province of Africa. Africa is a continent, fam, Afro, and African, a word of uncertain origin. The Latin word originally was used only in reference to the region around the modern Tunisia. And then it gradually extended into the rest of Africa. Okay? Only the Tunisia was named Africa because that's where the pale Europeans were taken as slaves by their colonizer, Africanos. Anyway, y'all think it's a game, huh? Man, listen, man. Y'all, this is not a game, man. I'm keep telling y'all, don't play around. Let us look at African American now. Check this out. There are isolated instances from the late 18th and early 19th centuries, but the modern use is a reinvention that first attested in 1969 in reference to the African American Teachers Society, which became the preferred term in some circles for U.S. blacks. Okay? Now pay attention to this. This was a reinvention, which actually was attested in 1969. And guess who was a part of the Teachers Association in 1969? Jesse Jackson. That's correct. Okay? Who in 1988 came and said that we should be called African American because he brought it back from 1969 because he was a part of the Teachers Association, which was also a part of the Colonization Society. Uh-oh, don't hurt them too bad, Chief. Now, what does it say? It was a preferred term. A preferred term. It does not mean That's what we called ourselves, African American. No, it was preferred. Okay? It is now commonly used in the Negro press because what? There was so-called Africans who were compared to what? The native Negro of the Americas. Negro de Terra compared to the Negro de Guinea. In Freeman publication in Canada, Afro-American 1817 as a noun. Man, like I keep telling y'all, stop playing the game, man. Stop playing the game. Stop playing the games. All right? I just wanted to kind of show y'all this, man, because they tricked us. I'm about to conclude this video because I definitely didn't want to go over an hour. So let's kind of summarize things. Okay, like I said before, there are detailed records from 1492 of everyone who came into the Americas, every single one. I'm talking about from the Spaniards, from Spain and Portugal, until the British got involved. From the Dutch, the French, there are detailed records. All right, detailed records. And when they all came into the Americas, the people of color were already here. The so-called Negroes of the Americas, the copper-colored races, we were already here. Okay? And then when they started bringing slaves, not slaves, colored people from Europe, they were not slaves. They were indentured servants here, coming here to work. And they were not coming on no big slave ships. They were coming with those ships that I showed you with those sails. All right? They were coming here as indentured servants to work on contracts for 7 years. It was only when they came here, the 7-year contract was not honored, and then they were enslaved in the land that they were brought to. And then the transatlantic slave trade began in the 1800s. That's when it began. In the 1800s with the slaves of Eastern and Northern Europe, and they were the pale-skinned people, the black people that did not know how to bathe, clean themselves. They were filthy. The poor, the degenerated people in Europe. They are the slaves that came here on the transatlantic slave trade on the steam boats or the steamships. Like I said, this is it's fun, it's easy to me. You feel me? And so they had to do what's called trading places. And that's what we did. Okay? That's what we did. We took the curse of the pale man, which is black. And then they started calling us black. And that's why our people are in the position that we are in. It's a curse. It is the most derogatory word on the planet. And you thinking things are happening to you because of the color of your skin. No, it is because you are calling yourself black. You have literally made yourself a 3/5 of a human, lesser than a third-class citizen. And you are gladly doing it because you speak it with your mouth. It becomes your reality because they were the ones that were called the black people, the swati people, the sordid people, dirty, filthy, disgusting. That's them, pale. Prove me wrong. Okay? That's when the transatlantic slave trade started, the Middle Passage. I'm talking about the physical one. All right? The physical one. There's also a spiritual aspect to that, which I've already broken down when 1492 was a portal. I don't have to get into that right now. I've done videos on that. But when we're talking about the transatlantic trade, slave trade, and they started calling those people immigrants, they were the immigrants were the slaves, the Slavs, because a slave is a Slav. Those are the 12-point-something million people they're talking about. There's no 12-point-something million people of color that came here into the Americas. There's no record of that. That's a lie. So they have to show you drawings and paintings. But we got actual records of over 12-point-something. You feel me? Slaves that came into the Americas. All the people that's in the so-called West Indies, those people did not come from Africa. They were already in the Americas. The majority of the so-called black people in the United States, the so-called Negro, okay, we were already here. We did not come. We were already here from time immemorial. What it is, I am America, was good. With that being said, I'm like I said, I'm concluding this video. Don't forget to go to www.myniji.com. That's MYNIIJI.com. Go subscribe, check out the merch, support. And this Sunday, we are having a Zoom call. If you would like to be a part of that Zoom, send me an email. You don't want to miss this. It is our time. Okay? This Sunday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. 3 p.m. Eastern Time, we have a Zoom call. All right? This Sunday, which is tomorrow. So today is the 26th, is the 27th. Okay? The 27th. All right? So send me an email, or if you're on Facebook, send me an inbox. But if you're not on Facebook, send me an email at chiefcalanagoflyingeagle@gmail.com. chiefcalanagoflyingeagle@gmail.com. You don't want to miss this Zoom. All right? I appreciate love each and every one of you. Enjoy the rest of your 24, and we will talk soon. Take care.